5 years, that's how long a boy sent letters to a father who wasn't real. He didn't text, he didn't call. He wrote on lined notebook paper with a chewed-up pencil, then walked to a blue mailbox behind a gas station and fed those pages into the dark. Like the mailbox was a mouth. Like if he kept giving it
It's
words,
okay,
it might
Eli, I'm
someday
right
give him
here.
one back.
We'll take good
And
care
then,
of
on an
this.
ordinary Tuesday in February, an envelope showed up at his group
get back
home.
here now!
His name
Don't
was
you walk
spelled
away
correctly.
from me! Eli!
His address was printed neatly,
That's
and the
not
return
fair, you
label said
cheated.
one thing.
No, you just
Dad.
suck at this game.
Eli stared at it until his hands started shaking, because nobody was supposed to answer. Eli Brooks was 14 when the first reply arrived, but his story started way earlier in a place he could barely remember, a cheap apartment above a laundromat. A mother who smelled like soap and winter air, a voice singing off-key while folding towels. He remembered that part in fragments, like his brain kept the good moments and threw the rest into a locked drawer. The drawer held the night she didn't come home. The drawer held red and blue lights bleeding through curtains. The drawer held strangers' voices saying words like accident and instant and sorry. No father in sight. No grandparents showing up. No godfather, no family friend. Just a social worker with a clipboard kneeling down to his eye level asking if he had anywhere to go. Eli didn't. So the system swallowed him next. First a foster home where the man barked orders like Eli was a stray dog. Then another where the woman tried too hard, hugging him so tight it felt like being erased. Then a group home with cracked linoleum floors and a TV that always had someone else's reality show screaming in the background. Eli learned how to pack his life into a trash bag. He learned how to keep his shoes by the bed. He learned the rule nobody says out loud: don't get attached, don't ask questions, don't take up too much space. But even when he stopped asking for things out loud, his chest still asked. Every night, who would have come for me if they could, who was supposed to teach me how to shave? Who was supposed to clap when I did something right? Most kids have an answer to the word dad, even if it's an ugly one. Eli had a blank. At 10 years old, he found something. It wasn't a photo. It wasn't a birth certificate. It was smaller and somehow heavier. A torn envelope wedged into the bottom of a box of his mother's things the social worker let him keep. The box smelled like dust and old lavender. The envelope looked like it had survived being shoved into a purse, sat on, cried on. Most of the writing was ripped away, but one part was still there. A street number, a street name. 117 Cedar Lane, that was it. No city, no state, no stamp, no signature, just an address like a half-finished sentence. Eli traced the numbers with his finger like they were braille. He didn't know what it meant, but his mind did what minds do when they're starving. It made meaning out of crumbs. 117 Cedar Lane became a place. A place became a person. And that person became someone Eli could talk to, someone safe. Someone who wouldn't interrupt him or flinch or tell him to be grateful. Someone who might, if the universe had even a small amount of mercy, write back. He didn't start with anything dramatic. His first letter was 3 sentences. Hi, Dad. My name is Eli. I think I'm your son. He folded it carefully, like folding something could keep it from falling apart. Then he stole a stamp off a stack of donated mail at the group home. He walked to the gas station where the blue mailbox stood like a guard, and he dropped the letter inside. The metal door snapped shut. It was loud in the winter air. Final. Eli waited like you wait for a grade, like you wait for a verdict. Every day he watched the mail come in. Every day he tried not to look like he was watching. He learned the mailman's schedule. He learned the sound of the mail slot. He learned the sick feeling of being wrong again, because nothing came. No reply, no returned letter, no wrong address. Just silence. And silence to a kid like Eli didn't feel empty. It felt crowded with all the reasons someone doesn't write back, but he kept writing. He wrote about school lunches and how the milk cartons always leaked. He wrote about a kid named Marcus who stole his hoodie and how Eli didn't fight back because fighting back got you labeled. He wrote about his mother's name, Marisol, and how saying it out loud felt like touching a bruise. He wrote about the dream he had where she was standing in a doorway trying to tell him something, but her mouth wouldn't move. And he wrote about little things too, because the little things were where loneliness lived. I made the basketball team, but I'm not that good. They put me on the bench mostly. But I like hearing my name over the loudspeaker. It makes me feel like I'm real. He never said, I love you. Not at first. That felt like stepping onto ice. But he would sign every letter the same way. Your son, Eli, the letters became a rhythm. When a foster placement ended and he got moved again, he found the nearest mailbox. When his grades dropped and a teacher told him he was wasting potential, he wrote. When he got caught crying in the bathroom and a staff member asked if he was sick, he wrote. He told his fake dad things he wouldn't tell anyone breathing in front of him. I hate my birthday. People act like it's supposed to be happy, but it's just a reminder I'm still here and nobody came. Sometimes he'd sit with the torn envelope beside him like it was a compass. 117 Cedar Lane. Some nights he imagined the house, a porch light, a man coming home from work. A man who didn't know how to find him yet. A man who would open a drawer and pull out Eli's letters like they were treasure. A man who would say, "Finally, I'm here." And then when the group home got too loud and the nights got too long, Eli did the one thing he could control. He wrote anyway, even when it started to feel stupid. Even when it started to feel like writing to a wall, because writing to a wall still felt better than talking to the air. At 14, Eli almost stopped, not because he didn't need the letters, but because needing anything had started to feel embarrassing. He'd been in the system long enough to see what happened to kids who hoped too hard. They got crushed. They got angry. They got sent away. Eli kept his hope small, like hiding a match in a storm. But that winter, something changed. His social worker, Ms. Harlan, sat him down with a sigh that sounded practiced. A family in the next county had looked at his file, then passed. "Nothing you did," she said quickly, too quickly. Eli nodded like he was fine. He was. That night he wrote a letter that didn't have jokes. It didn't have the careful tone he used to sound easy. It had truth. "Dad, I don't know why I keep doing this. I don't even know if you're a real person. Sometimes I think I made you up because it hurts less than the truth. If you're out there and you don't want me, okay. Just don't let me keep talking to nothing forever." He stared at the page for a long time. Then at the bottom he wrote the first love he'd ever dared to write to someone who wasn't guaranteed to stay. "Love, Eli." He mailed it the next morning before school, hands shoved in his pockets against the cold. He didn't look back at the mailbox. He couldn't afford to. 2 weeks later, the envelope came. It was sitting on the front desk when Eli walked into the group home, cheeks still pink from the wind. A staff member called his name like it was no big deal. "Eli, you got mail." For a second he thought it was a court notice, or a bill, or another form that meant his life would be rearranged again. Then he saw the handwriting, neat, adult, careful. And the return label that made his stomach drop. Dad. He didn't open it right away. He carried it to his room like it might explode. He sat on the edge of his bed. He turned it over once, twice. The paper felt heavier than it should. Finally, he slid his finger under the flap. Inside was one page folded cleanly. No scent of perfume, no lipstick mark, no fancy stationery, just words. "Eli, I don't know if I'm the person you meant to reach. I've never been anyone's dad. But your letters found their way to me, and I've read every one I could get. I'm sorry no one answered you sooner. I can't pretend I didn't read your last letter and feel it in my chest like a warning. So I'm writing back. My name is Daniel. If you want, you can write to me again. If you don't, I'll understand." But you weren't talking to nothing, not anymore. Daniel. Eli read it once, then again, then a third time slower, like reading it wrong would make it disappear. He pressed the paper against his face, not because it smelled like anything, but because it was real. A reply. A human reply. And then, like a dam finally giving up, Eli cried so hard he scared himself. The next letter he wrote was messy. His handwriting tilted like it was trying to run off the page. "Daniel, are you serious? Who are you? Why did you get my letters? How do you know my name? Are you my dad?" He crossed out the last question, then wrote it again under the scratch marks. He didn't want to be too much. But he was too much. He was 14 years of unanswered questions. He was every kid who ever sat in a waiting room while adults decided their fate. He mailed it the same day. And this time he waited with a different kind of fear. Not the fear of silence, the fear of being seen, because being seen meant being known, and being known meant you could be rejected for real. Daniel replied within a week. His letters were steady. No grand promises, no fairy tale language, just honesty. "Eli, I'm serious. I'm not your father, at least not in the way you mean. I bought a house last year, 117 Cedar Lane. The post office had been holding mail for that address because it had been empty for a long time. When my forwarding paperwork went through, they handed me a stack. Your letters were in it. I read them because I couldn't not. If you want to know about me, here it is. I'm 31. I work nights. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I'm better at fixing things than talking about feelings, but I'm trying. And Eli, you don't ever have to earn the right to be written back to. Daniel Eli read that last line until it burned itself into him. You don't ever have to earn the right. In the group home, everything felt earned. Food was earned by behaving. Privacy was earned by being quiet. Respect was earned by being useful. Love, if it existed at all, seemed like something only other kids got automatically. Daniel's sentence didn't fix Eli's life. But it moved something inside him, like a locked door clicking open. Their letters became a bridge. Eli wrote about school. Daniel wrote about work, carefully vague, never trying to sound cooler than he was. Eli wrote about the nightmares. Daniel wrote back with small, practical suggestions, like leaving a light on or keeping a notebook beside the bed. Eli wrote about a science project where his partner didn't show up, so Eli did it alone. Daniel wrote back, you didn't do it alone. You did it with yourself. That matters. Sometimes Daniel would include a photo, not of his face, just small evidence that he existed. A mug on a kitchen counter, a dog-eared book with notes in the margins. A backyard with a single porch light glowing against the dark. And then, one day, Daniel wrote a sentence that made Eli's heart climb into his throat. If you ever want to meet in person, we can. Public place, your social worker can come, no pressure, just an option. Eli stared at the words like they were a dare. Meeting meant turning the bridge into a door. And doors in Eli's life had a history of closing, but something about Daniel's letters didn't feel like a performance. They felt like someone standing still. So Eli said yes. Then he panicked. Then he said yes again. They met at a diner off the highway, the kind with laminated menus and coffee that tasted like burnt comfort. Ms. Harlan sat in the booth like a referee who wanted the match to end peacefully. Eli walked in and scanned the room. He wasn't looking for a face. He was looking for a feeling. Then he saw a man stand up near the window. Not tall, not imposing, just present. Daniel wore a plain jacket and held his hands together like he didn't know what to do with them. His eyes landed on Eli and didn't slide away. No pity, no judgment, just recognition. Like, there you are. Eli sat down across from him. For a second, nobody spoke. The clink of dishes filled the space. A waitress asked what they wanted. Eli didn't know. Daniel ordered hot chocolate for Eli without asking, then glanced at him like he expected to be corrected. Eli didn't correct him, because somehow Daniel guessed right. Eli hadn't had hot chocolate since he was little, since before the drawer in his mind got locked. Daniel didn't reach across the table. He didn't call him son. He just talked about school, about the weather, about how the diner's neon sign flickered like it was tired. And when Eli finally asked, voice thin, "Why did you write back?" Daniel looked down at his hands, then back up, and his voice sounded like it had gravel in it. "Because your letters felt like someone knocking from the inside of a locked room," he said. And I've been in locked rooms. Eli didn't understand that yet, but he felt it, the truth in it. After the meeting, Ms. Harlan said it went well, in the cautious tone adults use when they don't want to jinx something. Eli walked outside, breath turning to fog, and watched Daniel get in his truck. Daniel didn't wave like a cartoon dad. He just lifted 2 fingers from the steering wheel, a small sign, a steady sign. Then he drove away, and Eli realized his chest hurt, not from sadness. From something else, from the weight of wanting. Over the next months, Daniel didn't disappear. That alone was a miracle, he wrote. He showed up to one of Eli's games and sat in the back of the bleachers, not trying to claim space he hadn't earned. Afterward, he handed Eli a Gatorade like it was normal. Like caring could be ordinary. Eli started doing better in school, not because the pain vanished, but because he wasn't carrying it alone anymore. Sometimes, late at night, Eli would reread Daniel's first letter just to make sure it still existed. I've never been anyone's dad, but your letters found their way to me, found their way. Like they had feet, like they had purpose. Eli started wondering about that, about the address, about why his mother had it, about why it had been torn. About why an empty house had been the place his words kept landing. Ms. Harlan tried to request Eli's old records, but the paperwork was slow and full of dead ends. The system loved dead ends. Daniel, though, seemed to be unraveling for reasons Eli couldn't name. At the diner meetups, Daniel's smiles came late. He stared into his coffee like it was trying to tell him something. Sometimes Eli would catch him looking at Eli's face too long, like he was searching for a detail he didn't want to find. Then, one afternoon in early spring, Daniel asked Eli to meet him again. Not at the diner, somewhere else, somewhere quiet. Eli said yes, and felt that old fear creep back in, because people didn't ask for quiet unless they were about to leave. They met at a small park behind a closed library. The swings creaked in the wind. Daniel stood near a bench, shoulders tight, like he'd been holding his breath for days. Eli walked up, hands shoved in his hoodie pocket. "What's going on?" Eli asked, trying to keep his voice even. Daniel didn't answer right away. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. It wasn't one of Eli's. It was older, worn, the kind of paper that's been handled too many times. He held it out like it was dangerous. "I need to tell you something," Daniel said. Eli didn't take the envelope. He just watched Daniel's face, waiting for the part where the floor drops. Daniel swallowed. His eyes got glossy, not with tears that were falling, but with tears that refused. "I didn't buy 117 Cedar Lane by accident," he said quietly. Eli's stomach tightened. Daniel exhaled. "It's on the road where your mom died." The sentence landed with a thud that seemed to mute the whole world. Eli blinked. "What?" he whispered. Daniel's voice shook. "I've known her name for years," he said. "Marisol." Eli felt cold spread across his skin. "How?" he demanded. Daniel's hands trembled. "Because I was there," he said. And then he said the words that rearranged Eli's life in one brutal motion. "I was the one who hit her." Eli's ears rang. The swings creaked behind them like something laughing. "You're lying," Eli said, but it didn't sound like certainty. It sounded like pleading. Daniel's face crumpled just slightly, like a man finally letting the mask slip. "I was 19, he said. "It was dark, I was speeding, I saw her too late." Eli couldn't breathe right. Daniel kept going like if he stopped, he'd shatter. "I panicked," he whispered. "I didn't stop." The words "didn't stop" were sharper than "hit." Because hit could be an accident, not stopping was a choice. Eli's vision blurred. His hands clenched so tight his nails hurt. "So I'm an orphan," Eli said, voice rising, "because you ran." Daniel flinched like Eli had slapped him. "Yes," he said, and the honesty made it worse. Eli took a step back, dizzy with rage. Then another. Daniel reached out, then stopped himself. "I'm turning myself in," Daniel said quickly, like he'd rehearsed it. "I already talked to a lawyer. I can't keep." "Shut up," Eli snapped. He couldn't hear about lawyers. He couldn't hear about consequences. All he could hear was the sound of his mother not coming home, replaying in his mind with a new face attached. "That was you," Eli whispered, like saying it might make it untrue. Daniel nodded. His eyes finally spilled. "I didn't answer your letters because I wanted to be your dad," Daniel said. "I answered because I couldn't let you keep writing into the same silence I created." Eli's body shook. He wanted to hit something. He wanted to disappear. He wanted to rewind his life back to the moment before a mailbox answered him. "You let me call you Dad," Eli said, voice breaking. "You let me—" "I know," Daniel choked out, "and I'm sorry. Sorry." Eli hated that word. Sorry was what adults said when they couldn't put a broken childhood back together. Eli turned and walked away. He didn't run. Running would have meant he cared enough to be chased. He just walked, each step heavy, each breath sharp. Behind him, Daniel didn't follow. He didn't deserve to. And Eli didn't know if he would ever want him to. For weeks, Eli didn't write. He didn't read the old letters. He shoved them under his mattress like they were contaminated. When Ms. Harlan asked what happened, Eli said nothing. When Daniel's name came up, Eli's jaw tightened until it hurt. At night, Eli lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every kind sentence Daniel had written, every piece of advice, every moment of care. And the question that kept stabbing him was simple. Was any of it real, or was it just guilt wearing a friendly face? Eli learned something about anger. It's exhausting. It burns hot, then leaves you colder than before. One night, Eli pulled Daniel's first letter back out. His hands were shaking again, but this time from fury. He reread the line. "I've read every one I could get, and the next. I'm sorry no one answered you sooner." Eli's throat tightened. Because the truth was someone had answered him sooner. The system answered him with forms. Life answered him with silence. But Daniel had answered him with words that made Eli feel human. And as much as Eli wanted to hate him, hating him didn't undo the fact that Daniel had been the first adult to stay. That didn't erase what Daniel did. Nothing erased that. But it complicated the story, and complicated stories were harder to survive than simple ones. The day Daniel turned himself in, Eli found out from Ms. Harlan. She told him gently, as if softness could protect him from reality. Daniel confessed. Daniel gave details only the driver would know. Daniel didn't fight it. He accepted whatever came next. Eli expected to feel satisfied, like justice would plug the hole in him. Instead, he felt hollow, because punishment didn't bring his mom back. It didn't rewind the foster homes. It didn't erase the birthdays nobody celebrated. It just added another person to the list of people Eli had lost. Ms. Harlan asked Eli if he wanted to visit Daniel before the court hearing. Eli said no, then he didn't sleep for 2 nights. Then on the 3rd morning he said yes, not because Daniel deserved comfort, but because Eli couldn't stand the idea of another goodbye made out of silence. The visitation room smelled like bleach and old air. Daniel walked in wearing a plain jumpsuit, looking smaller without his jacket, without the illusion of normal life. He sat down across from Eli. His eyes were red-rimmed. "I didn't expect you to come," Daniel said. Eli stared at him, throat tight. "I didn't come for you," Eli said. Daniel nodded like he understood. "I came for me," Eli continued, voice trembling. "Because I don't want to be like you." Daniel's face twisted with pain, but he didn't argue. Eli swallowed hard. "You don't get to be my dad," Eli said. Daniel nodded again. "I know," he whispered. Eli's eyes burned. "But you also don't get to be the only reason I'm here," Eli said. "My mom is." Daniel's breath hitched. Eli leaned forward slightly, like he needed Daniel to hear every word. "I'm going to remember her," Eli said. "I'm going to say her name, and I'm going to live." Daniel's tears finally fell, quiet and steady. Eli's voice broke. "And I hate you," Eli said, then shook his head, angry at himself for cracking. "And I don't know what else I feel." Daniel pressed his palm against the glass between them, not as a request, but as an offering. "I'll write," Daniel said softly. "If you want, I'll keep writing, not as dad. Just as someone who owes you the truth every day for the rest of my life." Eli stared at the hand on the glass. Then slowly, he lifted his own hand and pressed it against the other side. Not forgiveness, not yet, but contact, proof that Eli was still the kind of person who could choose what came next. Years passed in small, stubborn steps. Eli finished high school, not perfectly, but honestly. He wrote an essay for a scholarship about letters, about how words can be a lifeline when nobody knows how to touch your grief without making it worse. He didn't use Daniel's name. He didn't need to. The story was bigger than one man's guilt. It was about a kid who refused to go silent. Daniel served his sentence, not long enough to satisfy the anger that still lived in Eli. Long enough to feel the weight of his choices in every locked door. He wrote to Eli from inside. No advice. No heroic speeches, just accountability, just presence. Just lines like, "I'm thinking about your mom today. I'm thinking about the life I stole from her. I'm thinking about the boy you were, and the man you're becoming." Eli didn't always write back. Sometimes weeks went by, sometimes months, but he didn't throw the letters away, because as twisted as it was, the mailbox had done something miraculous. It had taken a kid's imaginary father and turned him into a real human being. A broken one, a guilty one, but real. And in a world full of disappearing
It's okay, Eli.
adults,
I'm right
real
here.
mattered.
We'll take good care of this.
When Daniel got out, Eli was 18. Old enough that the
Eli,
system
get
couldn't
back here
hold him.
now!
Old
Don't
enough
you
that
walk
adoption
away from
papers
me!
didn't matter anymore.
Eli!
They met again
That's not
outside
fair.
in daylight
You
without
cheated.
social
No,
workers
you just
watching.
suck at this game.
Daniel looked older. Eli looked older too, in a way that had nothing to do with years. They stood a few feet apart, awkward. Honest, Eli didn't hug him. Daniel didn't ask. "I'm going to community college," Eli said finally. Daniel nodded, eyes glossy. "That's good," he whispered. Eli exhaled. "I still don't know what to call you," Eli admitted. Daniel's throat moved as he swallowed. "You don't have to call me anything," he said. Eli looked down at the pavement, then back up. "But I want you to know something," Eli said. Daniel waited, barely breathing. Eli's voice steadied. "You answered," he said. Daniel flinched like he didn't deserve the word. Eli continued anyway. "You answered when nobody else did, and that doesn't erase what you did. It never will." Daniel's eyes filled. Eli's own eyes burned too.
It's okay,
But it
Eli,
changed
I'm
what
right
happened
here.
next,
We'll
Eli
take good
said.
care of this.
And what happened next is mine. Daniel
Eli,
nodded,
get
tears
back here
falling
now.
freely now.
Don't you
I
walk
know,
away
he
from me.
whispered. Eli didn't
Eli!
forgive him in a movie magic moment.
That's not
He didn't
fair.
declare
You cheated.
everything healed.
No, you just suck at this game.
That's not how it works. But he did something harder. He chose to keep living without letting the worst thing define the rest. He chose to carry his mother's name forward. He chose to turn pain into a compass instead of a cage. And somewhere in the middle of all that, he learned the truth most people learn too late. Sometimes the letter you send into the dark comes back, not with the ending you wanted, but with an ending that forces you to grow. If you're listening to this and you've ever written your heart out, into a journal, into a phone note, into prayers you weren't sure anyone could hear, remember Eli. The words weren't wasted. They were proof you survived another day. And even if the person you needed never answered, your voice still matters, your story still counts, and what happens next can still belong to you. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to Truth Uncaged for more powerful stories.